In this video net interview at IBC 2011, I'm speaking with Matthew Kershaw, Content Director and Partner at BBH. Hello Matthew.
Hi.
We're obviously hearing a lot about the second screen and its potential to be synchronised with the main screen. And I mean that presents obviously some advertising opportunities for broadcasters. I mean, from your standpoint, you look after both creative and strategy side of the business. I mean, from a creative point of view, what do you think advertisers could do with that?
Yeah, I mean, second screen is a really, really interesting space for advertisers. If you think about what advertisers typically want to do, just in general, you know, they want to reach consumers, they want to make, you know, create demand effectively for their product, for their brand. They want to make consumers love them just that little bit more. And second screen, typically you do that through, you know, we've done it for 50 years through, you know, spot advertising on television. It's been a really, really major channel for that. And it's all about surprise and delight. The adverts you like, the adverts you think about, the adverts you talk about around the water cooler are the ones that surprise and delight you. They're the ones that your mum goes, oh, I like this one, when it comes on. And really that's what the second screen, I think, needs to be about to make it effective creatively, is about surprising the user, the viewer, you know, giving them something they weren't expecting, giving them something they're really going to enjoy or are going to find very useful. And this is you know, it's a space, a second screen, where we're already seeing consumers doing it, right? This is not a new bit of fangled technology that might or might not happen. We already know that in numbers and on scale, people are using Twitter, logging into Facebook while they're watching their television. So it's a really natural fit for everything we think we could do. The other thing that's interesting is just how the journey, how it can really concertina that journey that typically consumers go through, from becoming interested, aware about a product, a brand, and then going through to actually buying it in a store. That's something that might take weeks typically, but potentially with a second screen, you can go from seeing an advert through to buying and purchase much, much quicker. That's really interesting and quite disruptive. Okay,
I mean, in terms of surprising somebody then, I mean, for the second screen, is that surprising them with a different format of ad or a different kind of creative to what's on the main screen?
Yeah, I think you've got to think of it in a new way. I mean, we have a kind of shorthand which we call Super Bowl, Super Social. So it's this sense that you've got to create, you know, TV advertising, regular above the line spot advertising is really important still in creating a big buzz, creating engagement, really getting some fame or notoriety for your brand. But then taking that, that's the sort of Super Bowl bit, you know, the way that advertisers use the Super Bowl to launch these big campaigns. But then taking that and making that social, making that a shareable object, making, you know, we did an example of this might be Yo Valley, which is a dairy brand in the UK, an organic dairy brand. It was thought of very much as a, you know, quite a middle class organic brand, and they wanted to really become a much more mainstream brand. So we created some rapping farmers that were very, very funny, put it in the X Factor, which is a real family, heartland family viewing. But then we created a lot of work around that in the social space and potentially second screen as well on Twitter and on Facebook to get people engaged with and talking, and that really, really sort of, you know, that's the new shape we think that campaigns are going to take.
Okay, so not necessarily just harnessing the fact that it's interactive on the second screen, but making it social as well. Is that a key element?
Yeah, I think mostly what you're talking about when you are talking about interactive, the thing that, you know, the social space is so enormous. Clearly, there's also a role for couponing, which we also did with the Yo Valley couponing, the sort of promotional, direct marketing side of all that as well, of, you know, just actually physically getting people to go in store and purchase. But social is the place where we think a lot of this, there's a lot of excitement.
Okay, and I mean, in terms of sort of synchronising the main screen and the companion, I mean, you could just have the companion roughly in relation to the show that's on air, or you could synchronise it in real time. I mean, what do you think is going to be more interesting to an advertiser?
I think anything that's real time, I think is clearly going to be more exciting. The power of TV to get people to act, to actually do something now, is enormous. We've known that, you know, for decades. People do stuff when they're exposed in the right way to the right creative. So to bring down those barriers even further and for them to be able to do it right now before life's got on top of them, they've a million one worries, million one other things to do. I think that's a really, really powerful new emergence.
Okay, and who's going to sell this extra new inventory? I mean, it's basically greenfield territory, isn't it? It's new inventory. Who's going to sell that? Is that going to be the broadcaster, or is somebody going to come in and do it for them? And I mean, are we going to have a battle between the broadcaster and third parties? Because obviously you can't own a piece of time, it's just a slot of time on the second screen. I mean, can they make sure that that inventory is theirs?
Well, it's a big issue facing the industry. You know, there's a lot of disruption going on at the moment because clearly you've got devices, or you've got apps like Shazam, for example, who, with no reference at all to the broadcaster, know what's on television using audio fingerprinting and can therefore start to give you interactions with that show or that advert without any relationship or you know, financial money, you know, commercial partnership with a broadcaster. From an advertiser's perspective, though, all of that is sort of irrelevant. All an advertiser wants to know is, have you got the scale? Are you reaching a big enough audience for it to merit my money? And what's the actual opportunity, the creative opportunity I've got in that space to affect people and make them, you know, love my brand a little bit more?
So what's their metric going to be? Is it, you know, how many apps have you downloaded? Because obviously you need to get a client onto the device, don't you, to make the sort of the synchronisation.
Yeah.
Are they going to ask a broadcaster, well, how many apps do you have downloaded for that show before we even think about it? And then they start looking at, you know, how many sort of people click through, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, measurability is a really important thing, obviously, but I do think that measuring a lot of those things about number of interactions and time spent, and those are sort of hygiene points, I think. What clients really want is to know what impact it had on people, you know, on their brand. How did it change perception of their brand? And that's something which is quite hard to measure. It's also something which you need to measure over time, and you also need to have benchmarks in place so I can see, you know, oh, I've got this figure. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that better than my competitors getting? Or am I worse? What, you know? So you need to almost set up a new structure, a new way of thinking and measuring all that stuff. In the same way, actually, that we have already with TV advertising, we already have, you know, ongoing tracking surveys that allow us to know, you know, how interested and how affectionate people feel towards certain brands over time.
Okay, now if you was a broadcaster today, what would you do to make sure that you own that inventory and dominate it?
I would be, if I was a broadcaster, I would be looking at ways and technologies that integrate with what consumers are already doing. And what consumers are already doing is using Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Those are the sort of they're the holy three of social and interactive at the moment. So I would be looking at ways I can layer on top of that to bring back some of that audience. I think it's very hard to expect consumers not to use those or pull them away to a whole new place. But if I can find a way to leverage Facebook, to leverage Twitter, to bring them back into my space and some of my control, that's where I think broadcasters should be looking at the moment.
Okay, so we're getting back to social again.
Well, interaction with the show.
Okay, and just finally, I mean, does the advertising industry like video advertising networks? Because there's more inventory, not just on the second screen, but we're seeing EPGs with display banner ads and things like that. And you know, we've seen sort of advanced kind of futuristic displays at this show of a whole wall covered with TV and apps, and there's video advertising inventory down the side, or display advertising inventory. I mean, can a broadcaster cope with all that? I mean, are we going to naturally see video ad networks come in and start filling some of those places?
It's true to say I don't work for a media agency. BBH doesn't sell or buy sort of advertising time. We do the strategy and the creative around it. But it's true to say that in general, media agencies like to have one point of contact. You know, they don't want to have to go and do lots and lots of deals. It's too time-consuming, too expensive. So they do like to have intermediaries that can wrap up a large space, and that's why, you know, Google has been massively successful over the past 10 years. They've really been such a dominant player. You can go pretty much once and do that kind of deal in one place. But you know, ultimately, advertisers don't really care. They don't care who they're buying it from. They just care that is it doing the right job for them? Is it meeting their, you know, is it giving them a return on their investment on a large enough scale? Is really what it comes down to. So we're sort of, as an industry, we're sort of agnostic. You go away and sort that out amongst yourselves. You know, the broadcast industry. We don't really want to know, to be honest. But you know, come back to us, and when you've got sufficient scale and sufficient opportunity, you know, we're very interested.
Okay, and just finally, in terms of scale, I mean, we're all very excited about the second screen in this industry because we're always looking a little bit ahead, and you look around this show, everybody's got an iPad, but it's not a typical cross-section of the mass market. I mean, are we getting a bit ahead of ourselves? I mean, in terms of scale, is the advertising industry looking at this as being now or next year or the year after?
I think the early trials are happening now. I think that we are a little bit ahead of ourselves. I think unlike many technologies, notably mobile, which was 10 years in between people talking about it and it really happening on a mass scale, we are seeing people interact on that second screen in large numbers already. So we've got to be starting to make the best of that opportunity. Clearly, when tablets are a sub £100 or $100, €100 purchase, and they're much more mass, that's when you're going to see it really, really picking up. But now is the time, I believe, to be at least trialling and testing, dipping a toe in the water.
Okay, all right. Well, it's very interesting, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.